The first time that Konstantin and myself met in Russia, and my first time to Russia, was about 6-7 years ago. And it was the Navy Day, the day of the armed navy of the Soviet Union. So Konstantin, who was an officer in that navy, invited me and my wife to a trip on the Moskva with his family and his wife Svetlana, who has helped so much in this organization, and the whole family. And then, while we were drinking vodka and talking about Germany and Russia, he said, "Oh, we must put the Soviet Navy war flag up in this boat, in the ship." But the captain was afraid to do that, because in that time, 6-7 years ago, you did not have the freedom you have now to speak openly about these things. But after an hour of discussion, my friend Konstantin, and with a lot of vodka, he convinced the captain. So the flag went up, we were all happy, and we were all drunk at the time. And that was when we discussed the possibility of building an international think tank, or a network, or a working group, trying to help the cause of the people in the world. And now we are here, after 5-6 years. And what is the lesson of this anecdote? The lesson is what Lao Tse, the great Chinese philosopher, once formulated. Even the largest march begins with the first little step. And I think that is the experience of this Congress. When our friends from the organizing committee proposed that I try to form a first group in Mexico, I said, I don't know if this will work. We will try to do that. Because this is like getting married or starting a war or an enterprise. You know how it begins, but you don't know how it will end. So it's empirical. So we will see where we will be in 1 year, and maybe in 1 year we can meet here on Mexico or wherever and see the results of our work. But what began so peacefully and spiritually on the Moskva, I think that has a future. So I accepted the proposal that we try to start this thing in Mexico. But then, of course, the question appears, if you want to change the world, what will be the spirit with which you are fighting? And what will be the values you're fighting for? Because if you do not have a value system and strategic objectives, you cannot fight. It makes no sense. So I thought that our basis on the scientific level would be Marx, especially the 11th thesis on Feuerbach, that the task of philosophy is not to give one interpretation after another to how the world is, but to change it. Science and practical transformation combined. I think that is the spirit of all of us who are trying to advance this. And of course, your country produced one of the greatest scientists in the history of mankind, Lenin. There's nothing better to understand what politics is and how you transform a society with progressive objectives than what Lenin wrote before and during the revolution. Of course, all the vanguard science and culture that has appeared since then must form the basis of what we do. And what are the values we should try to implement? I think there's only one basis possible for our work. that are the values of the Enlightenment. There's never been a bigger progress in the history of mankind than the contributions of the Enlightenment. This is the basis for peaceful cooperation, and I think this is the basis we need to use. In other words, the metric of liberation, which will guide our work, should be oriented in these big historic figures. Now, this meeting was unique because you have many decision makers here. You have many people here who have power. This is not an academic meeting like in the university. In the university, basically you can say whatever you want to say because nobody cares. And this is different here, because you have people here with real political, economic, and military power. So that makes it qualitatively different to any academic meeting. The decision makers. It is also interdisciplinary. You cannot have a meeting today with one science alone. That is sterile, that's not productive. It must be interdisciplinary, we have that. And this is a multiverse from different geographies and different cultures. So I think that the idea of forming this network of scientists for safe progress on an international level is correct. But the question is, where do we go from here? As Lenin said, so often quoted, "Chaos, which way do we have to go to change the world?" And there are three big avenues today which the world offers. It could be the American dream. That is one way. That dominates the Western world. And it dominates the young people all over the world. From China to Vietnam to Russia, the young people in the middle classes have one idea of what the future life should be for them. And this is what you call, in science and chaos theory, an attractor. This is the dominant attractor of the world system. And no government that does not take that into consideration can be stable. So a new society which wants to go beyond a vulgar US capitalism must take into consideration the worldview of the young people and the middle classes. The second offer we have is the Chinese dream. And Xi Jinping, with a lot of courage, said in the 19th Congress a couple of months ago, we want a Marxist society, a communist society for the future. And in order to build that today, in the 21st century, we must study Marx again. So the idea of the West that the market economy would destroy the socialist system and lead to the installation of a capitalist democracy was wrong. And Xi Jinping says the future is communism of the 21st century, which is the same as popular democracy, basically. And the third offer is the Russian dream. Many of the Russian comrades said Russia could be could be the future software of the global society. Unfortunately, I did not see the proof of that. So I don't know which of the three avenues we can walk will be the right one, but that would be the strategic objective of our work, to find out which is the best and the viable way to change the world in accordance with these great personalities which I have mentioned. Thank you.